interview tech professionals and get advice on their job search. Today, I've got a really special friend of mine, Salim. We met, gosh, dude, like 6, 7 years ago when I was at
Wild.
Crunchyroll. Wow, this gentleman was pinged me on LinkedIn asking about an open role, and I said, "Hey, man, I think we hired for that position, but happy to still chat." So we hopped on the phone and talked for like 45 minutes, just hit it off, and kept in contact since. And it's been almost a decade. He's since worked at Apple TV Plus as a motion and product designer. And then most recently, back in, I guess, 2021, Salim, you launched your own production studio. And this gentleman has his hands and signature, his name on a ton of anime titles. So I don't want to like mess up any of this introduction by misrepresenting. But Salim, if you want to just give a quick intro, what you've done, where you've been, and we'll talk about
Man.
job secret stuff right after.
Yeah, no, it's like a lot. It's weird too because a lot of this stuff is like you just get so used to keeping things a secret, like as if I'm working in like the government or CIA or something. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, like just like Henry said, like it was so great to meet you. Like I'm glad that you were the guy that I reached out to when I first was interviewing at Crunchyroll. And yeah,
Right on.
I'm 29 years old from Tampa, Florida, first generation American. Went to school for animation, always wanted to work in anime, grew up watching anime on Toonami and just trying to find a way to work on it from back home in the States. Couldn't figure it out, tried to figure it out using the internet. But up until then, working at Apple, then I got called to work on Apple TV Plus whenever it went public. Worked on over 400 known productions at Apple Studios
Oof.
in 6 months. In 6 months during COVID, remotely on a laptop, invented a animation toolkit, and then after that, left, quit Apple. There was no job, and then I kind of had to do things on my own again, man. Just like we were saying earlier, like yeah, I feel like everybody nowadays got to have like their own little business kind of to kind of just keep it going. So that's me.
Dude, that is so wild, man. For those watching, we kind of caught up prior to this, obviously, just to see how things are going. And I didn't know 400 plus titles in a 6 month period. How does that even happen? Like, what's the process behind that?
Yeah,
What tools were you using? Like, just, yeah,
yeah.
spill the
Well, I
beans on that.
can
That's
for
crazy.
sure talk about yeah. Like my NDA is up soon, so I can talk about everything soon. But yeah, when I was doing sales at Apple, running the business team in my local Apple store, Tampa, Florida, and I got recruited specifically because they needed somebody who can animate, was familiar with software that could recommend new software to improve their techniques that they were already using in-house with the team that was there. And by team, I mean like 3 people. Nobody in the marketing division knew that that team even existed. But, henceforth, there was a plan to work on certain productions that were already there. And my job within that 6 months was to make sure I stayed on top of what was needed from me. For sure, it could have been done a better way, but again, I was hired to do a specific role, so I stuck within those lines. Especially at Apple, they want you to kind of adapt and see if they could make things more efficiently. But I just did my best with being remote and limited to like just this laptop and time zones. So the reason why it's 400, I say 400, is because it's not really known how many productions I've worked on at this point now because the stuff that I created, Henry, it's still being used at Apple even though I'm gone. But I'm never going to know what it's being used on because it can be replicated and adapted to every language and any production involving a screen. So they're probably still using it. I don't know how many productions. It could have been hundreds more, but from the list that I saw, I know it's at least 400 as of 2021. So I had to make sure I could duplicate things, copy and paste things, and adapt things for the same type of like scripted actions. So I would get a
Hmm.
script and the script would say, okay, Henry picks up the phone and it's a FaceTime
Okay.
call from Salim. And so I would just have to make what I would do is make one animation of that action. And then if another studio or production person came to me and was like, hey, we want to do it for this scene, but it's actually this long that the phone rings for. So I would just adjust the timeline for that and then send them that prototype. And so that's how I was able to kind of keep on track of those animations instead of redoing the animation over and over again.
I see. So I figured there was some sort of process behind that, some sort of templated process, which
Yeah.
everyone should adopt. Now, when you say animation, you don't mean like illustration, cartoon, visual design. You mean, I guess maybe what do you mean by animation specifically in that.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean this is a question I get, I think, all the time because when people see my resume or they see my LinkedIn profile, they're like, "You did animation for Apple TV Plus? You must be talking like cartoons." And it's like, no, it wasn't that. They were like, "Man, you must be able to know how to do everything," and you kind of do have to know a little bit of everything. So this process that we were doing is, I was going into InDesign, I was going into Illustrator, Photoshop, designing assets or getting assets from Apple's marketing division, Marcom, and using those
Okay.
assets to recreate what your iPhone screen looks like, or what your Mac laptop screen looks like, or what your iPad looks like. So I would recreate the OS from scratch along with my teammate at the time. And I was the only one on the team who knew how to animate. So I was specifically in charge of making sure all of the movement was correct to the OS. And I was in charge of making sure of, at the time, I don't remember what OS it was, but because there's productions where it would be in different time periods, we'd have to make OS for like, I don't know, like going way back into like, earlier 2000s and looking up the history of the OS, how certain things moved, how the icon looked before they updated it. So I primarily did a lot of just the animation stuff, just making sure that all the movement looked real. So that if you watch Ted Lasso or you watch The Morning Show or you watch Servant or you watch whatever, you know, the graphic made you think that it was real and that the phone actually operated the way that it did. Because when
You
they're
just
on
dropped
set,
Ted Lasso like it was nothing.
yeah, no, yeah, I did the whole second season of Ted Lasso, but I audited it. So I just made sure things looked correct. But I did have to
Okay.
tell, or I did have to, not to say that I know the people, but I had to inform their visual effects team like how to fix something. Um, but yeah, every phone that they have on set is blank, and then we're in charge of doing the graphics, auditing it, and then making sure that the company that they're using follows those guidelines to make sure that it matches with what Apple expects it to be.
So that's how that works? I just told you they had an iPhone
For
app and it was like,
no, I mean, if it was
oh
me,
my
like
God.
my whole thing is efficiency. If it's me, I'm spending the money for the real device, and there's a whole argument to be said about like how certain things are done.
Right.
Some companies they don't want to take the ding on the credit and then get a line, open up a new phone number, all that stuff. But yeah, that is
Yeah, I
how
could see
majority of the stuff is
see
done
that.
in the industry.
That's crazy. Had no idea, man. I had no freaking clue. It makes sense now, though. I haven't watched Ted Lasso season 2 now and just look at all the animations.
The one I
That's
remember the most is like there's a scene where Jennifer Aniston is holding a phone and somebody's FaceTiming her
mm,
from the morning show. And I remember they hit me up one time and they're like, "Hey, we need a graphic of a ceiling. We don't have that." And I'm like, "You can just grab like stock footage." And they're like, "No, no, we don't have it." So my home in Florida, I like recorded my ceiling and then I mapped it to a green screen, and that's what's in the show. So my bedroom
for the
ceiling
morning
is
show.
yeah, in one of the shots. Yeah,
That's tight, man. Oh my
yeah,
God.
you got to make do.
I'm gonna I'm gonna watch the show now. Which is it? Was it the opening episode or was it the pilot or?
I have it somewhere on my laptop. It's just I'll send it to you afterwards. But it's stuff like that that is, it's challenging, it's fun, and it's not my specialty. I was never a visual
Mm.
effects guy, but I had to learn how to do visual effects to get my degree. Yeah.
Don't send me that link. I'm gonna go into the show and just once it hits me, like that's the scene.
Yeah,
So don't send me
she's
something
lying down
else.
in bed and she wakes up to answer a FaceTime call. It's the only scene that where she does
Okay.
something like that. So,
Okay. All right. Then I'm gonna pause
mhm.
it. Like that's Salim's ceiling. Love it, dude. So man, we can spend all day on this. I'm a big Apple fan. We can spend all day on this, but I want to get into your transition from Apple, how you founded Anime Infinite,
Mhm.
and then just the progression from 2021 throughout the pandemic to today.
Mhm.
You've got on your LinkedIn profile, you're just credited out, man. It's almost like half a page, a web page of just credits. So transition from
Mhm.
Apple, how did that happen? How did you find your company? What motivated you to do that? And I guess for job seekers
Mhm.
that have an entrepreneurial mindset, this is an option, right? You don't necessarily need to find if you are in a good space to where you've got some runway. finding and founding your own company, solopreneurship or LLC, isn't out of the question. So how did you
Yeah,
from Apple to Anime Infinite?
absolutely. Yeah, I think, and this goes back to one of the first conversations I think we've ever had is, I feel like I'm the product of like a failed like recruiting era. I don't know how to describe it really, but
Yeah.
I was kind of like not forced, but I had to make my own company to survive. And majority of my career has always been, just doing it on my own and then finding my lane and like sticking in it. And this is the first time that it's actually worked, but it took a decade
Wow.
for that to happen, right? So Apple was my first job ever doing sales. Then Apple TV Plus happened. I thought, this is it. This is where my home is going to be. I'm going to stay here, build this out for my career. Things don't go according to plan. No job. So after that experience, they told me, my boss at the time told me, she said, we have to send you back to your Apple store. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, after doing this experience, like, I'm not going to go back to that. And this is during COVID still. And the
Wow.
first day I got back to my Apple store, I asked my manager there, like, hey, can I remain remote? And he's like, no, you have to be here. And this is like after me making them like $30+ million in the 3.5 years I was there. The first day I went back, I put in my 2 weeks and didn't know what I was gonna do. But during that time, the last year I spent at Apple, I had been researching how to get into the anime industry because I didn't get into Crunchyroll, couldn't get into Bandai, couldn't get into Viz Media, couldn't get into any of the players that exist at the time, right? And still exist.
Yeah.
They're like, you just need more experience. You need more experience. You need experience. I'm like, man, what do I need? So I was messaging people online, and one of the best pieces of advice I ever got that really made this happen. I had a mentor from college named Daryl Bencosme, and he told me, he's like, if you want to work somewhere, go look at the demo reels of people that got hired and just start following those people on social media. And so that's what I did. I started following Japanese artists. I couldn't read Japanese at the time. I was just following artists I liked. And it eventually led me to this company that was fully remote and they were doing anime. And I just messaged the guy just like I messaged you. And he was like, yeah, come freelance for me. And so that's kind of like how I got my start.
Wow.
I got my first anime job on Discord from a Discord server. And then after that, it was just through Twitter. I was getting job DMs through Twitter. And that's just kind of how it's been ever since. I started my LLC and then it's just been nonstop ever since. I'm not the type of guy to like, I don't really care about credits and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't care about awards or being famous, but that's just how it's been. Now studios come to me and it's just, I'm thankful for the opportunity to draw for a living and produce.
Dude.
Yeah.
So I mean, if in the next 5 years you change your mind about being famous and credits and stuff, I'd love to write your book for you, man.
I mean, there's some, it's not public, but I do have like Emmys. I can't talk about it,
Okay.
but they're
Yeah,
there.
no worries.
They're there,
Totally
but it's like, I can't talk about it.
definitely
But yeah,
deserve
man,
it, man.
I think you've had this conversation with a lot of people too that you meet. It's like you have to endure and you got to want it. You got to go for it, man.
Yeah.
And I just never took no for an answer. If people were like, you're not, I still get this to this day. They're like, you don't have enough experience or you're overqualified now. And it's like,
Hmm.
I don't know how I became overqualified in like 2 months. So it doesn't make any sense. But
You,
yeah, no,
you you bring up
yeah,
a great point, man. I think every time we catch up, whether it's 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, there's just like this energy you bring, dude, and I really appreciate you just being so transparent and forward. And what I've noticed about you is that no far answer mentality. It isn't like you're knocking on doors every day. It isn't like you're just this bully and being super aggressive for your next opportunity. I think in the back of your head, you're like, I just want to fucking animate,
I just want to
and
make
I'm
stuff,
this
man,
good.
and make a
And
living.
I'm yeah, exactly. And people, yeah, and people can definitely see that in you. I mean, I definitely saw that in our first conversation. That's why we've been in touch for so long. And you
Hmm.
reached out, many a times to check on me to see how I'm doing. And I think when people think of the grand scheme of things, this decade it took for you to get to where you're at, that's like a blink of an eye, right? Like we're here
Yeah.
sitting in this conversation, and I can't really tell people what I've been through other than Crunchyroll, working at Comura, being laid off. But everything has led up to this specific point where now I'm designing job seeker playbooks in Notion for
Hmm.
free, and I'm still getting people reaching out to me saying, "Hey, man, this was a fantastic resource. Thank you so much. I got this job here and there, or you're coaching this and that." And I don't think we spend enough time on like realizing where we've been and where we're at now. And I don't think, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily this framework of like go, 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 go. It's just really, how do I say it? Just really fine tuning what the hell you want to do, and then I think
No,
it'll attract the right folks and people and products into your space. Because I still think your story is second to none, man. To go from
I appreciate it.
Apple,
Yeah.
and then I didn't know you started off your first gig as a
I,
freelancer. Yeah, let's talk more about the
yeah,
story.
yeah, I think when I interview, the first question I get from people is like, why would you quit Apple? Why'd you leave Apple? It's Apple. And I'm like, you guys have this notion of what you think the company is like, but Apple's such a big company that it's so hard to navigate and, get to the right people. Like I've been flown out to LA and I've met the head of services before, and the head of services
Hmm.
didn't even know that my team existed. And they weren't even familiar with the work I did. And when I told them and I showed them, I don't want to specify anything, but I showed them like what I worked on because I still have some of it on my phone. And
Yeah.
they were like, "Wow, like you belong at Apple TV Plus, but like we're so sorry, there's no job." And I'm
Wow.
like, I don't know what to say. I flew
Yeah.
right back to Florida. Yeah, and now like my story now, like people don't know where I am, but I still reside in Tampa, Florida, but I spend majority of my time now in Japan just because of the time zone difference. Where I live in Florida, there's a 13 to 14-hour time zone difference, and I'm at a disadvantage if I get a project, or I'm at a disadvantage to talk to clients on the same time. And so, it's cheaper. It's cheaper to be here in Japan. It's the lifestyle is better for me compared to living in Tampa. I think one of the negative things for me the most that I've got was, hey, you're in Florida and the industry's in California in the States. You can't just
Hmm.
get up and move to California like without something like stable. And so because there was no job, I was not able to make it out to California. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go to Japan. Things have worked out. Things have worked out. But it like you said, it takes a lot of sacrifice and risk. And I think, like you said earlier, I think you have to really know what you want. And then as you're going down this journey, you're figuring out more and more like, is this the right thing to do? And I know this is the right thing for me to do at my age of 29 years old. Um, I'm enjoying the ride. I'm working on almost every single anime that's coming out. And if I'm not working on it, I know a colleague or a friend that's working on it. And yeah, it's like everybody's feedback that I get that's in the anime industry back home in the States and Canada and Europe, it's kind of like they're more on like the licensing and the marketing side of things, but there's nobody that really knows how anime is made more than like a few people, including myself right now. And even the streaming side of things too. Like I think we spoke last time about the streaming side of the business, especially that anime is like super popular now in the States. People are realizing. So I have ideas and plans, but those are for like another time when things are more like tailored out.
Yeah.
No.
Dude, we can go on forever. You just basically said there's a handful of people in the world that understand how anime is created. And going back to your point about not being able to fly to California, well, the companies in California are working with Japanese publishers for anime anyhow. So you're absolutely in the right spot in the world to be at the epicenter of anime. And
Yeah.
gosh, dude, I just don't know what to say from here. I'm just always in awe, man.
It's weird. Yeah, because it's like I don't know how to. I think when I was back home in the States trying to figure everything out at first, I was like, I don't understand the bridge because the only bridge I knew was like, Crunchyroll, Viz Media. And like when I started digging into more information, I'm like, oh, they actually don't know what's happening. And it's only from like the licensing side of things, and the production side of things is becoming more and more public now. Like there's a book that's being published right now from a Kickstarter that's going to help people like myself and people that are in the industry and people wanting to get into industry as a non-Japanese person learn the pipeline, and like just figure it out. They don't have to go through the long haul of the decade that I went through. One of my good friends,
Yeah.
he's from Mexico. He's 24 years old. His dream job was One Piece. And in like 3 months of him being in Japan, he got to work on One Piece. And he's worked on like 12 episodes of One Piece now at this point.
You're you're lying. That is so
So
crazy.
it's like there's now like the knowledge is there to like speed run the process. But we still have to make sure and be responsible to make sure that these artists understand like how Japanese people make anime. And that's kind of like the major challenge. But once you figure it out, it's kind of like, I'm not afraid to tell you, like, and the people that listening to this, but like, I run my business using Google Translate, DeepL.
Mm.
I know some Japanese, but I can't speak it like fluently. I can't comprehend everything properly, so I have to use translation tools. And a lot of the work I do, like even just now, recently, like before I hopped on, I was working on a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like sitting there, understanding the language, what the director wants, what the producer wants, and then making it happen, despite not knowing the language.
Dude, that's insane. I didn't know that. I thought you, over the years, just are now a fluent speaker.
So hard. It's so
Yeah.
hard, man. I'm
Yeah.
learning it a
I've been
little
trying to
every
learn.
day.
Yeah, I've been trying to focus on my own native language. I'm half Vietnamese, half Cambodian, and I hired two coaches off of Italki or Italki. Why am I saying it like that? Italki. And at first, it was going really well. I noticed the differences between Khmer, which is the Cambodian language, and Vietnamese, and I
Hmm.
started to get accustomed to both. And then I just like, man, it's just so much memorization, and I wasn't speaking enough. I got to a point where I was speaking with my Vietnamese tutor 3 times a week, but
Hmm.
then it felt like so overwhelming, right? And I don't think anything will ever replace being in a country and
Hmm.
speaking at any given moment and testing it out and understanding body language and being able to experiment. 'Cause I think even on like these tutoring sessions, you have to just talk about certain things. And
Hmm.
it didn't feel, my brain was just, my brain was fried.
And
So I
Vietnamese
dropped
is
the
one of
ball.
the hardest languages to learn too, just because of and you'll know this for sure, the tonal
The six
part of the,
tones, yeah. Yeah.
yeah. When I first heard about that, I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
it's interesting. It is. I think I've gotten a bit of understanding or a majority of understanding of the accents and the tones, but
Hmm.
still, man, it's such a subtle difference. But yeah, Japanese sounds like a really good language too, man. So once you get fluent there, we'll be close.
Unstoppable.
Jump you back on
Yeah,
there.
no, yeah, yeah. The hardest thing, and I've heard this from a few C-level people that work at studios here. Um,
Hmm.
the word on the street is like, there's nobody out there right now that speaks fluent English, speaks fluent Japanese, and knows the anime production pipeline. There's not a person that exists that is good at those things, like with the acumen of both
Yeah.
sides. And so there's this neat, like a lot of companies right now are looking for somebody that understands business acumen, understands the business of how to make anime, and who also like has firsthand experience as an artist on a production. And so the comments that I've gotten is like, dude, if you learn Japanese, it's GG. Like it's a
Yeah.
wrap. But it's a journey. Learning another language is a journey, man. You know, the longer that I'm here, the more I'm exposed to it, the more I'm forced to speak it and understand it. And
Hmm.
yeah, like when I go out and when I'm not working, it's definitely a part of like it's in the back of my head. Like, hey, speak, listen, learn. Do karaoke and
Such
like
a
read
beautiful language.
read the like.
Read manga.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. Yeah, yeah. A lot of my
Beautiful
friends have told me
language.
that that's like how you do it.
I mean, yeah, with any language, right? I think that there's apps out there now that are layered over Netflix. I think it's called, I actually forget what it's called. I don't want to misrepresent any app out here, but you
Hmm.
watch a Netflix movie and it kind of helps you learn through a conversation, or not conversation, but submersion, is it called it?
He's like, you're learning through the media.
Osmosis. Yeah, yeah, dude, yeah. Celine, last a few final minutes here. You've shared a ton, man. But if you could give one piece of advice for a job seeker on their
Hmm.
journey, what could you pull from your bag of experience here and let them know what to kind of hone in on?
There's a word that I'm looking for, but I could say some more stuff than just giving that one word. The one word would describe it like perfectly, but I'm blanking on it right now. It's kind
Is it
of
a
like
Japanese word?
No. Like you, I guess you could say like, no, it's not a Japanese word. You really have to want it. Like the industry is so competitive, or a lot of industries are competitive right now in this job market. And this is coming from a guy who's only been employed once and who's had to make his own business to survive. You have to really want it. Nobody owes you anything, you know, network, make genuine connections. Don't just randomly DM people on LinkedIn expecting them to give you something. Like genuinely get to know the people that you're networking with and, you know, whatever it is that you're going after, you know, you have to put your all into it, man, because that is what speaks for you. I don't like to look at resumes when I'm recruiting people for projects. You know, I want to know who the person is, what their work ethic is like, and if they really want it. Like if somebody really wants it, you're gonna know. If
Yeah,
somebody's in it for like like some alternative reason, then you know that's not the type of person you want to hire. So just be genuine. If you have to really want it, I'd say be aggressive with uh, with your approach, you know, but be respectful.
yeah, man. I think,
Hmm.
I mean, your industry, your profession is like the niche of the niche, right? But this
It's so
provides space
cutthroat.
for, yeah, for
Yeah,
any real, I mean, whatever you're looking for in gainful employment or starting your own business, it's like, uh, I mean, you say if you find someone that wants it, or when you can display that you want it, it's almost automatic. It's magnetic, right? And thanks for sharing that, dude. I mean, I've gotten a lot of DMs recently because one of my posts went quote unquote viral, like 43,000
I was like,
impressions.
I'm getting a notification. I'm like, oh, Henry's popping off, dude.
Yeah, you're on that post. Yeah, you're on that post, dude.
I'm like going in
Let's
Shibuya. I'm like,
end with
Henry just like
yeah.
popping off, dude.
Let's talk about that real quick. And it's cool. Yeah, I think the reach on that post was literally looking back at it. I wrote it because it was an emotional story for me, and it sat with me to this day about being on a phone call with a VP of talent for a recruiting role for a gaming company in tech in SF. I was like, cool, this could be a nice transition from Crunchyroll. I can build my background in anime and gaming, and then maybe after that I'll do something else. But it just didn't sit right. When you mentioned, you can tell when someone's having, when you're having a conversation, it just gels. From the opening of that conversation, it just felt very robotic. And then when that question came up, it was like almost my brain said, dude, you're not going to work well at this company. So it was a good thing that they didn't move me forward because it would have just been a waste of their time. And I don't like doing that to folks. But
Hmm.
yeah, the post blew up. For the first 5 days, it was regular, impressions like 1,000 or whatever. And then Sunday night, as I was watching the Niners game, I just kept getting, my phone kept getting that red button, that red notification. I'm like, what's going on? Someone comments. I was like, okay, cool. I'll just reply with my thoughts. And from there, I think whatever button was hitting LinkedIn land on the back end system, it just took
Hmm.
off. And in 2 days, 44,000 impressions, like over 500 comments. I think at this point, over 400 engagements. But I guess the point of the story is the folks that were DMing me, it was all the same. Hey, can I get a job? Hey, can you look at my resume? Hey. And I didn't realize that it was actually still going on or a thing. And granted, these were folks from overseas, not necessarily in my specific demographic in SF, but I think it's a bit more tailored to
Hmm.
understand, how to message folks. But yeah, I think as I'm looking at all the connections and the connection requests and all the DMs, as a human, you can quickly see which one stands out, right? So, I mean, if you're listening to this, and you got this far in the podcast, even just structuring your outreach with a couple sentences is going to put you at the 95 percentile of possibly
Hmm.
being connecting with someone like Salim or myself. And not to say that I'm,
No,
Salim's,
I mean you're
uh,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Like I'm very cautious about what I post and what I say now, just because like studios don't like you sharing your work, like specifically Japanese studios. So I don't even mention credits anymore or anything like that, just because it's whatever now. But you're absolutely right. Like you never know what you put out there, and people flock. You know, they come to you.
yeah.
So.
Yeah, on the networking piece, I'm thinking maybe I didn't like tailor that specific comment to the right angle. But going back to when you messaged me and when I message folks too, it's always like, hey, love this about you. Let's chat. Here's my Calendly, right? And that simple gesture can go along. So yeah, just wanted to share that because even though it went viral, I'm not like some super influencer. I'm just
No,
noticing some of the trends and the patterns of conversations on LinkedIn. So I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts on that. But do any last fun facts about Japan, about your journey before we wrap up?
no, I mean, like if you've never been here before, it's a great place to spend some time. Great change of pace, especially if you're not from like a city. Like it's such a great experience. And yeah, man, just travel. I always encourage people to travel. Travel does so much to you. It opens your mind, opens your eyes, different walks of life. It's one of the best things I think you could ever do, and it could help you with your work too. It's always inspiring, gives you a different sense of energy. So
Mm,
yeah, it's
love that.
cheap right now, very cheap right now. Yeah,
I will come visit, man, wherever you're at in Japan. I've always
yeah,
wanted to head out that way. So I know we talked about this last year as well, but travel is on my list in 2025. And maybe we'll do a podcast in person, man. Who knows?
yeah. I got something planned next year, so you'll hear about it. You'll hear about it, man.
Sounds good, brother.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, man. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And thanks for your knowledge, your presence, your story, and being so transparent again. And we will catch you all next time. See you guys.
Peace. Thank you for your time.